Some stories begin with laughter, others with love, but Daniel's story begins with silence, the kind of silence that lives inside a house ruled by a strict father. Mr. Robert was not a cruel man, but he was a man of rules. His voice was law, his word was final, and his house was built on discipline. On the wall above his desk hung the most feared symbol of his authority, a long, polished wooden cane. It wasn't hidden in shame. It was displayed openly, like a warning to anyone who dared to disobey. Daniel, only 12 years old, often found himself at odds with this world of strict order. He was clever, playful, and restless, always drawn more to adventure than to routine. Unlike his siblings, who obeyed quietly, Daniel tested boundaries, sometimes with jokes, sometimes with silence, and sometimes with outright defiance. But that day, his defiance would cost him dearly. Before leaving for school, Mr. Robert had given a simple instruction. Come straight home after class. No games, no delays. A man respects time, Daniel. Don't forget that. Daniel nodded, but his heart told another story. His friends were meeting by the river to play his favorite game. The temptation was irresistible. Just one game, he thought. Father won't ever know. The sun was already dipping low when Daniel finally raced home, shoes muddy, shirt wrinkled, school bag half open. But as he entered the courtyard, his excitement froze. There stood Mr. Robert, arms folded, waiting. His eyes were steady, sharp, unreadable. "Where have you been?" he asked, his voice calm, too calm. Daniel's throat tightened. His mind screamed to confess, but fear pushed him toward a lie. "I stayed back for extra lessons," he muttered, staring at the ground. For a moment, silence. Then his father picked up Daniel's satchel, gave it a shake, and out tumbled small river stones and a crumpled note from a friend, "Meet us by the river after school." The truth lay bare between them. Daniel's pulse quickened. His father's gaze did not waver. Slowly, with the inevitability of a storm, Mr. Robert reached for the wooden cane hanging on the wall. "Tonight," he said firmly, his voice echoing through the still house, "you will learn what obedience truly means." The living room felt heavier than usual, as though the air itself had thickened with fear. The walls seemed to close in on Daniel, every shadow stretching longer as his father's footsteps echoed across the wooden floor. The polished cane gleamed in Mr. Robert's hand, catching the dim light like a sword about to pass judgment. Daniel's heart pounded so loudly that he thought his father could hear it. His hands trembled at his sides, his mind racing between panic and regret. He wanted to speak, to apologize, to promise never to lie again, but the words stuck in his throat. Mr. Robert stood tall, unyielding, his eyes fixed on his son. "Do you understand why you are here, Daniel?" he asked, his voice slow, steady, and sharp as a blade. Daniel swallowed hard. "Because I lied." "Not just that," his father pressed. "You broke trust. You disobeyed a direct order. And when caught, you chose lies over truth." He paused, lifting the cane slightly as if to underline his words. "A man who cannot be trusted is no man at all." The sentence fell heavy, carving itself into Daniel's young mind. He wished desperately for this to be over, but his father was not one to rush discipline. He believed every strike of the cane had to carry meaning, otherwise it was just pain, not a lesson. "Bend forward," he commanded. Daniel hesitated, his legs refusing to move. The thought of the cane touching him filled him with terror, but his father's voice cut through his hesitation. "Do as I say, Daniel." With a trembling breath, Daniel obeyed, leaning forward, his palms pressed against the edge of the wooden table. His whole body stiffened, waiting for the first blow. The cane sliced through the air with a terrifying whistle before it struck. Crack! Daniel gasped, a sharp cry escaping his lips. Pain flared across his back, hot and searing. Tears sprang to his eyes, but he clenched his teeth, trying not to wail. Another strike. Crack! The sting burned deeper, cutting through his pride. By the third strike, tears rolled freely down his cheeks. The weight of guilt pressed heavier than the cane itself. He wasn't just hurting because of the punishment. He was hurting because he had disappointed his father. "Do you feel this pain?" Mr. Robert asked firmly between strikes. Yes, sir," Daniel sobbed. "Good. Remember it. Let it carve itself into your memory, because lies will always burn worse than truth." Every word hit Daniel's soul harder than the cane hit his skin. He wasn't just being punished, he was being reshaped, forced to see the cost of dishonesty. Finally, after the fifth strike, silence returned. Daniel's shoulders shook as quiet sobs escaped him. Mr. Robert lowered the cane, but did not soften his expression. Instead, he walked around the table, kneeling slightly to meet his son's tear-streaked face. "Look at me." Daniel hesitated, but slowly lifted his eyes. "You think I do this because I hate you." His father's voice cracked slightly, though his tone remained stern. "No, son. I do this because I cannot let you grow weak. The world outside this house will not forgive lies nor reward disobedience. Better you learn that lesson here, under my roof, than out there, where the price will be far greater." Daniel's chest heaved with heavy breaths. For the first time, beneath the sternness of his father's gaze, he thought he glimpsed something else. Fear. Fear that his son might grow into a man without honor, without discipline. That realization pierced him deeper than the cane ever could. Mr. Robert placed the cane back on its hook above the desk, then turned away, leaving Daniel to absorb the lesson in silence. The punishment was over, but the memory had only just begun. That night, Daniel lay in bed, his back sore, his mind restless. Every time he shifted, the sting of the cane reminded him of his father's words. "Lies burn worse than truth." The phrase repeated in his head like an echo he couldn't silence. He pulled the blanket tighter, not just for warmth, but for comfort. Though the punishment had ended, its shadow lingered. He felt anger, shame, and sorrow tangled together. Part of him hated his father for the pain. Another, quieter but stronger, understood. This was not punishment for cruelty's sake. This was punishment with purpose. For the first time in his life, Daniel felt the heavy weight of responsibility. Weeks turned into months. In the weeks that followed, something changed in Daniel. The playful boy who once laughed at rules now thought twice before defying them. He walked straighter, studied harder, and even when temptation called, the memory of the cane pulled him back. His friends noticed at first. "Daniel, why don't you come with us anymore?" one of them teased. Daniel smiled faintly, though the memory burned in his chest. "Because some lessons you only need to learn once," he replied. At home, Mr. Robert rarely mentioned the incident again, but his eyes seemed to watch Daniel differently, not with suspicion, but with expectation. It was as if the punishment had shifted something invisible between them, a silent agreement. Daniel would carry the weight of that lesson into manhood. Years later. Time moved quickly. The boy became a young man, and the memory of the cane became less about pain and more about principle. Daniel excelled in school, not because he loved every subject, but because he refused to be careless. When challenges came, he faced them with discipline, hearing his father's voice in the back of his mind. A man who cannot be trusted is no man at all. But the deepest change came years later, when Daniel became a father himself. One evening, his young son stood before him, guilty of breaking a promise. The memory of his own punishment flashed before his eyes. The fear, the tears, the cane. For a moment, his hand twitched as if reaching for the same method his father had used. But then he paused. He knelt, placing a gentle hand on his son's shoulder. "Do you know why this matters?" Daniel asked softly. "Because trust is everything?" The boy nodded, eyes watery. Daniel's chest tightened. Those were his father's words, spoken years ago, but now Daniel chose to deliver them without the sting of wood. "Yes," he whispered, "because trust is everything." That night,